What if I told you that outside of iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and rFactor, we have a sim racing game that's created by some of the most experienced devs in our industry. It's still being worked on for updates, and best of all, it's technically free. I think it's one of the most underrated games that we have. It's called RaceRoom, and today I'll be giving it a play and seeing if it's worth starting in 2024. So RaceRoom Racing Experience is an extremely large racing sim created by KW Studios, who you may remember as Simbin. This is the developer that created GTR, GTR 2, and the Race WTCC games. This is a sim that they've created after those games. It features a little bit of everything, and it's based on the ISI Motor 2 engine, which you may remember as the rFactor engine. It's also used in like Automobilista 1. It was used in the original race games as well. It's a bit of an old engine, but it's still pretty good, and KW Studios has created its own graphics engine over the top, so it looks a little bit newer than the old physics engine. RaceRoom is basically a modern evolution of the Race07 game, in my opinion. It's one of the great sim racing games, and RaceRoom had a very good place to start with Race07. It is worth saying though that RaceRoom is over 10 years old. It was made in 2013, I think, when it started. It makes me feel really old as well. But this is not a new game. It's been around for a long time, but it's been consistently updated over those years. So how do you buy RaceRoom and get started? Well, for starters, RaceRoom is technically free. I'd like to think of it like the iRacing model, but much, much cheaper. Like iRacing, you get a bunch of base content for free, but there is no monthly subscription fee. So you get a base couple of cars and tracks, and you can race them whenever you want. You don't have to pay any money, but to buy extra cars and tracks, you do need to buy them. Similar to iRacing, unlike iRacing where the content's like $15 though, in RaceRoom it's around like $2 to $3, so it's a lot more economical. On top of that, you can buy packs for specific series and tracks and topics to save money. And on top of that, you can buy the premium pack, which includes everything in the entire game for 108 Australian dollars. So unlike iRacing, where buying all the content will cost over $3,000 these days, RaceRoom you can pick it up for $100, so it's much cheaper. You can buy it all from within the game as well. The store is a little clunky compared to the iRacing store, but I find it's a lot more straightforward than going to Steam and trying to find the DLC page on Steam, which is surprisingly difficult. So what content do you get in RaceRoom? Well, there's a lot of different cars and tracks, but for starters, I hope you like DTM. The DTM cars are kind of the king of this game, in my opinion. You have the modern, kind of boring GT3 DTM cars, and you also have the previous Class 1 cars that were raced up until 2020. These Class 1 cars are awesome to drive. I'll get into it in just a sec. But in terms of other series, you also have the WTCR series from 2022 all the way back to WTCC in 2013. You also have GT Masters if you want to race like various GT3 cars. There's GT1 cars from the late 2000s. There are prototypes, like the Audi R18 is in there, and there's a bunch of open wheelers. There's like pretend versions of the Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, and the IndyCar, and some historic 90s F1 cars as well. In terms of classic cars, there are also Group C classics and prototypes. There are classic DTM cars, there's GTO classics, there's Group 5 rockets. There's all the way to like a bunch of old touring cars as well. Like there's Godzilla, the R32 Skyline, which is pretty cool. There are so many cars here. There is a Porsche Cup car. There's the Jimmy Broadbent Praga that he drove as well in here. There is a truck, which is cool. In terms of tracks, you can feel the European and German base of the developers, and for this game, there is a bunch of DTM tracks here. There are tracks like Norris Ring, Sachsenring, and Lausitz Ring. There's also a bunch of the usual suspects in sim racing. You got Monza, Nordschleife, Bathurst, Imola, Daytona, Spa, and all of the usuals. There is also a bunch of tracks that I rarely see in other sims outside mods, and there's Assen, which is an awesome track. There's also Salzburg Ring, there's Brno, Dubai, and some awesome street tracks, Pau and Macau. So how does RaceRoom feel to drive, and what's the handling like? Well, generally it's very good. The cars feel like driving hard is quite easy, and you can slide them a little bit. I would say this falls more on the rFactor side of things. Of course, with the ISI motor than iRacing. You can kind of dance around with a little bit of slip angle and get away with it. It feels fun to push right up to the limit. I've had so much fun driving the DTM cars. I got into a bunch of races at the Norris Ring, which was cool. These cars have like DRS and everything, and I don't know, the AI can sometimes do some funky stuff, but I think the cars are really fun to drive. Something I found tricky to set up is the wheel rotation seems to change for every car, and you set it in the garage menu, and for each car it's different, and it's probably the most confusing part of setting the game up for me. But otherwise, the driving makes a lot of sense. I'm not esports level in this game, so I don't know like the actual full tricks to get the most speed out of everything, but I've had a lot of fun just driving up to the limit in each car and feeling it slide at high speed. It's also worth saying that the physics have a bunch of real life drivers providing input. You have Bruno Spengler, Daniel Juncadella, and you also have Kelvin van der Linde giving physics advice, and they're pretty experienced drivers. It's also worth saying that the developer is owned by KW, which is a very famous suspension manufacturer, so you better believe they have some good suspension data that they will be putting into the physics. So for graphics, I think RaceRoom looks fine, but it definitely looks really good, I would say, for a game that came out a decade ago, but you can see sometimes that it's not quite up to scratch with the modern sims like AMS2 and potentially AC EVO that we might be seeing very soon. This game does have VR support though, so if you're up for immersion, this game will look after you. And it was rumored that this game was going to go to the Unreal Engine a little while ago, but it was a rumor and we haven't heard anything about that since, so we can assume that's probably not happening. So with the sounds in the game, RaceRoom has its own custom audio engine, and a lot of people, including some people here at Overtake, think that it is the best sounds in all of sim racing. And you can give it a listen yourself. I think it sounds good. I can see why people really rave about it. Nothing jumps out to me like that's stupidly better than everything else, but I think it's very good. There are a lot of little kind of tweaks. The sounds of the cars bottoming out is very nice. I like when you rub wheels with another car, you can hear like the rubber, like the kind of sound of wheels hitting each other, which is a little bit different. I don't hear that in many other sims. So with the AI to race against, I find the AI very hit or miss. I find it really depends on the car and the track that you're driving. Some combos are really, really good, and some are completely all over the place, and the difficulty level can vary track by track. Some tracks the AI is incredible, and some they're not so good. Another thing that I found is that the AI cheats sometimes. Now, I think they cheat. I don't have any proof. This may just be a skill issue from me, but there's at least 1 or 2 corners that I've driven through that I'm like, I can't take this flat. Like, I'm absolutely grip limited. I can't take it flat without running off the road. And the AI just like stays hard in it and just drives around the corner. And look, maybe this is a conspiracy theory, but I think sometimes the AI cheats a little bit to go faster than you. We actually created a video recently on this channel comparing all the AI in a bunch of I think it's like 7 modern racing games. You can check it out if you want to see it compared to a bunch of other modern sim racing games. So the AI is fine and it's good to race against, which is important because it brings me to my next point, the multiplayer. So for multiplayer, for starters, there are open servers. There's an open kind of server list that you can jump in and find someone to race against for fun. There is ranked racing as well, and at the moment, the way to enter is actually through their Discord server, where they have a bot set up which will automatically place you in a race, which is a pretty neat solution to this. The game also has a bunch of really interesting special events that they put on, like the 2.4 hours of the Nürburgring alongside the 24. Which featured a bunch of official cars and content and stuff. There was also a Macau Grand Prix that they put on last year in-game, which was really, really cool. So you could qualify for the Formula 3 race or the GT3 race. The racing though is mostly against European drivers. They do have stuff set up for the Americas and for Oceania, but it is generally hard to get a really big race with good ping in my time zone with a deep field. I would say if you're in Europe, the servers are generally stacked. You'll find lots of people to race against, but if you're outside Europe, you tend to struggle. Esports-wise, this game has historically had some really good competitions. The biggest one probably at the moment is the DTM Esports Pro Championship, which was recently won this year by Tim Jarschel, and it also featured a bunch of top sim racing talent. There was Nikodem Wisniewski, you had Kevin Siggy, you also had Moritz Lohner as well in there, so a bunch of really, really good esports drivers. So should you play RaceRoom in 2024? Well, for starters, it is free to try and free to play, so I recommend giving it a go and seeing if you like the feel of the car and if it runs on your computer well, if you vibe with it, and if you do, you can decide to start buying more content. I really think this game is mostly in competition with a game like Automobilista 2, in my opinion. It feels like a much cheaper, less intensive on your computer AMS2 with a fair few less features. It's still very good and worth it if you want to drive some awesome cars at some awesome tracks. There are some things missing from this game. There's no weather though. There's like no rain. There is also like no kind of day-night cycle, that the time doesn't move in game. So there's a few things missing, but I think it's great for single player racing. And if you're in Europe and you want to do some multiplayer all the way up to an esports level, it's also very good. So that's RaceRoom racing experience. Are you a RaceRoom racer? If you are, let us know in the comments your thoughts on the game and why you love it. I was streaming it recently and I had so many fans of the game coming in being like, oh, I love this game, it's really fun. It seems like there's a lot of fans that really, really love this game, so I'd love to hear about it. And otherwise, if you liked the video, feel free to leave a like and you can subscribe to Overtake for more sim racing videos. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.